You are listening to the WillPower Podcast. Welcome to the show. I am Will Holdren, and I talk with some of the most influential CEOs, entrepreneurial leaders, and thought leaders to reveal the secrets that have led to their success. I believe that with the right knowledge and mindset, you can do anything you say your mind to. So if you want to learn how to change your life for the better, if you want to learn how millionaires actually became wealthy, or if you want to develop and start your own business from the ground up with the right knowledge to help you, then you are in the right place because this is the WillPower Podcast. How are we doing, everyone? My name is Will Holdren. I am the host of the WillPower Podcast. Today we have an entrepreneur and a visionary leader, and his name is Rich Kahn. And Rich is actually the co-founder and CEO of a company called Anura. And on top of that, he's really been a serial entrepreneur since 1993. So he has plenty of experience in this realm, being an entrepreneur. And Anura is actually a fraud solution for a lot of companies out there. And they help expose different malwares, viruses, and different things like that. And on top of that, Rich has operated an Inc. 5000 company for over 5 years. And he personally has won several awards, such as an Ernst and Entrepreneur of the Year award. So it's an absolute honor to have him on here. So first and foremost, Rich, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's interesting that your company is based around malware and, protection, all that kind of stuff. You're actually the first person I've had on my podcast with a company that's focused on that. So I'm super excited to dive into that and how you got into that space even to begin with. But starting out, I want to ask you a question I ask all of my guests, which is one, what makes you want to take time out of your busy day to hop on podcasts like these to go out there and share your story?
Well, I used to actually do webinars internally, and it was a big lift because we had to curate the content, get a guest, because we'd never just do one-on-one. You always want to have a guest style podcast style design. Then we'd have to get the questions, make sure that both sides are good with them, prep the email, send the emails out, get people to sign up, and we get 50 to 100 people show up to the webinars each month. But we're advertising to the same audience, month in, month out, and we do one a month. So we end up hiring a company to help us get on more podcasts. So they'll do some advertising to try to get us on podcasts, or a lot of times I'll get invited to different podcasts. I'm on 2 to 3 podcasts a month. And what's nice about it is I have a different host, different questions, different thought processes, so different information, comes out of me, at these different events.
Yeah.
And we're talking to a different audience. So each week or each podcast that I do, I'm getting in front of different audiences. And we're a small, scrappy company, and we've been growing. We've got a name for ourselves in the space. So I should say really small, but generally speaking, on the smaller side. But it's nice to get, the name out there and as many, audiences that you can get in front of.
Right. And in this century, it's all about how many eyeballs can you get onto you and your business and just your voice and really your mission. So excited to jump into this. Sounds like you're doing a lot of great things with Anura, but before you got into what you're doing now, kind of walk me through growing up. What was that like? Were you always an entrepreneur, or when did you kind of feel the entrepreneurship bug?
Um, I think I've always grew up as an entrepreneur. Like I always wanted to do something to make money. Didn't necessarily want a job. I wanted to go out and do something on my own. I felt you can make more money that way and you can set your own hours and everything else. Um, I remember being a door-to-door salesman as early as 9 or 10 years old. For a company, it was a shoe company that, kind of made it to be your own boss where, work when you want to work. So knock on doors and have a catalog, and I sold shoes. Um,
Yeah.
Right after that, I was probably 11 or 12 and I started a landscaping company, wanted to make some money. And it wasn't a company per se, but I had over 10 clients. So for an 11-year-old, 10 clients at 20 or $30 a yard, and have zero expenses,
Right.
that's good money back then, when you're at 11 or 12 years old. So I
Yeah.
always did that. I started a bunch of other little things, but my first digital marketing internet business was in 1993. Now, just to remind everybody, the internet wasn't public until September 1st of 1991. Prior to that, there was ARPANET, which I built bulletin board systems on and had phone lines coming into my house and people uploading, downloading software and stuff like that. It was really kind of cool, but it was kind of like a high school project. No money being made behind it. It was just kind of fun. But once the internet got introduced, I was like, wow, you don't have to dial a modem anymore. It's all computers are on all the time, basically, and how the network works. Now, to get to the internet at the time, you still had dial-up. So I basically I was just enthralled with the internet. I'm like, everything's going to go through this new communication protocol. Eventually, your TV, your radio, everything, the way we get information is all going to happen on this information superhighway. It's what
Yeah.
they dubbed it back in the 90s. So I said, you know what? I'm doing a lot of research on what's going on, reading magazines, getting my hands on any information I can get my hands on. And so I figured, why not write a blog about what's going on? And actually, it was a newsletter at the time, more like a newsletter design. So I started writing a newsletter, specifically what the changing things going on the internet. If I found cool websites to go to, the directions on how to get there, because it wasn't point and click. It was all command line. You had to type it all out, and it was long strings. And if you made one mistake, it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I'd give directions on how to get to like these new locations that had pictures of like the Hubble telescope. I remember putting up pictures on that. I mean, there's just unique places to go and what was happening on the internet. And then I was doing it just for fun. And I was getting people subscribing to the newsletter by trolling AOL back in the day, saying, hey, I've got this newsletter that talks about the internet and what's changing. If you're interested, send me your email address. And I'll add you to the list. And in a short period of time, I had 20,000 opt-in people to this list, which was back then something powerful. And one of my subscribers turned around and says, hey, can I advertise in your magazine? I'm like, well, sure. And that's when we started making some money doing it. So then what happened is I started having people advertise in just a text newsletter, wasn't anything fancy. But they would pay in a letter. And before you knew it, I was making a couple $1,000s a month, nothing crazy, but as a side hustle, it was nice.
Yeah.
Um, and then that started to eventually morph into all the different things that I ended up doing up to this point. I mean, at this point, I've now bootstrapped 6 multi-million-dollar web properties, um, all from just having an idea and then putting a few dollars in cash into the business, maybe like a couple $1,000 just to get things up and running and growing the company.
Hmm. Yeah, so you were definitely ahead of the time on the internet and you were ahead of the curve, getting into that space. And it's crazy to me how it's changed so much, even since when I started using the internet. I mean, nowadays you type up, you got AI giving you an answer. You don't have to click or find different links when, back when I was in school, you had to really actually search to actually find what you wanted to find. But now AI just tells you everything.
Wait a second. This is going to date myself. You
Yeah.
had you had the internet in school?
Right, right,
I
right.
did
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Yeah. So thank God for that. But
We had to learn a Dewey Decimal System so we can go to the library and figure out, do research that way. That was old school.
yeah, that's a while ago. Yeah. But yeah, it's just interesting to see how it's just changed over time and it's going to continue to change. I feel like if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you got to be ahead of that curve and understand how that stuff works and understand how to properly use those systems into your business. So walk me through, why did you decide to go into the digital marketing space to begin with? I mean, did you just have some kind of feeling to go in that space, and why didn't you go into real estate or any other, construction or development or anything like that? Why was it digital marketing that drew you to that space?
Well, I did do real estate. So I did that too. I had my real estate license and I did a lot of flips and stuff like that. But with the digital side, again, when I first got into it, I didn't plan on going into a digital marketing system. Back in the 80s, when I built a bulletin board system, it was just about fun and communication and testing, you know, these new technologies that existed. Because I remember back in the 80s, I was in high school and email had just become a thing. And it was interesting because like the email addresses were hugely long because it told them how to get to your systems and where the email address existed when they first came out. And I remember we had this system and we were trying to ARPANET it. So what would happen is people would come to my system, log in, type their emails, put the addresses in, hit send. It would store all the emails. And then at like 1 o'clock in the morning when nobody was using the phone line, it would dial out to a main server, send up all the email, download all the email. And it would do this because back then we paid long distance charges.
Mhm.
So to avoid long distance charges, there was numbers that you can call that were so far away that would not have long distance charges occurred, and everybody knew how far they can go. So if I wanted to email somebody on the West Coast, it would take 5 to 7 business days to get there, or I should say business day, 5 to 7 days to get there. They would get their email if they got it the same day, checked it, and responded. Another 5 to 7 days to get back. So it could take 2 weeks to get an email response, but it was something cool because it didn't exist before. So when you start looking at all this stuff, I was just around. doing stuff that was cool and fun to do. And then when I started writing my newsletter, to me, it was just something fun to do, something really cool. Kind of like, I don't know, and I hate to make this analogy, but kind of like Facebook. When they first built it, they weren't looking to make money, right? They were looking just to have fun, doing something different, be something that's cool. And again, if the movie is any accurate to the real thing, Zuckerberg kept pushing off, ads and stuff like that because he didn't want to cloud his creation with advertising like everybody else did. And ultimately, today that's all he does. That's where they make the billions of dollars. You got to get paid someday. But
Yeah.
for us, like I said, so when I first started the newsletter, I wasn't planning on doing digital marketing. And then that one email came in from that one client to say, "Hey, can I advertise it?" And I'm thinking, well, why not? Boom, I'm in technically the digital marketing space now.
Got
And
it.
it just happened to be a progression because you had you had I would say two directions to go into digital marketing in the internet when it first came out to make money. Everybody's advertising something somewhere. It's like huge opportunity. So like you can make money doing digital advertising, or you can make money in the porn space. Those were the two big ones. Gaming came a little bit later, which obviously trumped a lot of stuff. But I mean,
Yeah.
porn always had the money to create new technologies. This video conference we're having right now, this was originally created by the porn industry. They had the money to do it, and the demand for it, and they were able to create it. So
Yeah.
for me, I went with the marketing side. It was a safe bet, right?
Yeah.
So in that marketing space, I just kind of stayed with things, but like, part of the progression is I was doing this newsletter and then I had this idea. Um, why not build websites? When the websites came, because websites came out in probably 94. So in 94, 95, I started building websites and people were having like I had a host that I can host my website with. So all I had to do was design a website and put it on a host, kind of like you do today. But what ended up happening is back then, all these new companies were coming and going, and the company that was hosting our sites shut down. They just went out of business. So I had a choice, either shut the business down and give everybody back money if they prepaid for services, or create it in my house and host my own server. I'll get a T1 coming in the house, computers. I'm like, if I'm going to go that far, let's get some modems and then do ISP services. And that's what we did. So again, it wasn't initially in the marketing space. It was more digital website design, which is kind of on the marketing side. But
Yeah.
then we had ISP services. So
Yeah.
I was just kind of doing things, and it was just kind of how my career just progressed over time. It was just,
Yeah.
what's cool? What's next? That's cool.
Right. You've been growing as the industry in that space has been growing as well, which is kind of cool to see. You just keep on transitioning, and that's what success is for an entrepreneur. You got to be able to pivot and keep moving forward and keep staying ahead of what technology is doing.
Well,
Do you?
look at it this way. I'll give you one other thing that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a Shark Tank watcher. I love just because I like watching entrepreneurs come up with unique ideas and different things, right?
Yeah.
And I like watching their pitches and all this stuff. And I love it when they're like, okay, we're going to get involved in this industry. And it's like, well, what are your numbers? They always want it. Mr. Wonderful always wants to know the numbers. Like, what are your numbers? Like, what's the market cap? What's like, what are you going to do? And it's like, this is a $5 billion market cap. There's tons of money to be made. It is $10 billion market cap. The digital marketing, as a global entity, digital marketers spent over $700 billion last year. It's a big market. So again, if you're trying to build a career out of it and make money, it's a great market to be in.
It's huge. And to that point, too, there's a lot less fixed costs that come along with that. Like you're not paying, it's all technology, right? It's online. So there's a lot less fixed costs in other industries.
Yeah.
Are you still doing your newsletter, by the way?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I shut the newsletter down years. I mean, we have a newsletter today, but it's all about fraud. So we shut that newsletter down because I just couldn't keep up with all the stuff that was going on,
Yeah.
and didn't make sense to keep it up.
Yeah. At some point, you gotta say no to some things. So
Yeah.
that's also a difficulty of an entrepreneur. So walk me through how you eventually got into the fraud protection space and the fraud solution space, because I can definitely see it with AI. I mean, the frauds are becoming more public and happening more often than ever before. I mean, I think I get hit up at least 3 times a week for someone trying to like spam me out of something. And I think a lot of companies out there also struggle with how to handle this kind of stuff. So walk me through kind of your background getting into this fraud protection space, and really what are you guys providing value wise with the companies you're stepping in and helping?
All right. So one of the companies that I built was a company back in 2003. My wife and I started it together, and it was an ad network, small ad network, kind of think of Google, but way smaller. So people can go in, log in, build an ad, put a URL, click URL, all text-based, kind of like Google, how much they want to pay per click, and pick their targets and everything else, hit submit, and boom, they're live, and they're buying traffic from our network. On the other side, I had a whole network of publishers that had, I want to say, 4 or 5 billion search requests per day. It's massive. And what was happening was they were driving in all this traffic. Clients were buying it. In 2004, probably late 2004, we started getting some complaints of traffic quality. And I looked at it and I right away knew it was fraud. And I had dealt with fraud in other businesses before. So I'm like, it's fraud. You know what? I don't want to be the guy solving fraud. So let's go out and find a company that does this, license their product and bolt it onto our platform and just move on. Well, back in 2004, and then I continued looking into 2005, nothing existed. In fact, the first commercially available fraud detection solution didn't come out until 2008. So I
Wow.
was early on. I knew it needed to be there. It didn't exist. So as a developer, I wrote it myself and it worked great. And I kept evolving it as fraud keeps evolving over the years. And 10 years into it, we decided let's sell this company. It's got some value to it. Let's see if we can retire. So I hired an M&A company. We ran a process. We put a list together of 100 potential partner people that would buy the product. I spoke to Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Microsoft, and about a half a dozen other big companies. And they all said the same thing. We don't care at all about the ad network. It's been done. We don't care about it. But the fraud detection that you've developed inside your platform is something that we're very interested in. Is it standalone? And do you have clients behind it? And I had to say no to both questions. And they all said the same thing. Once you do, call us back. So that got us thinking, okay, well, maybe that's where the value is. So we started looking into it and we decided after doing some research and running some tests against our software and against other software, we actually brought something special to the marketplace. So we decided to launch it in 2017 as a standalone product.
Okay.
And we've been doing that ever since.
Wow. And how has growth been going since you relaunched it in 2017? How's that been going?
It's been growing great. Probably 40, 50% growth year over year.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah.
Growing nicely. Never as fast as as an owner wants it to, but it's growing nicely.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's your target clientele for this? I mean, are you doing any kind of company or a small size company, or what are the
With
dynamics?
the amount of services and products and hand holding that we do, we really focus on I would say mid-sized companies and up. The real small startups, we have a relationship with one of our clients that will take them on and cultivate them. And then once they get to a certain size, then they can work directly with us. But we have some minimum fees and stuff like that that kind of preclude some of the startups and some of the really small companies. But once you get your feet on, like probably our ideal client is somebody who spends or manages $50,000 or more per year, per month in digital marketing. The numbers, like, because the ROI on our product is like through the roof on that. So, and that's a great way for us to prove our technology and our value. So that's kind of where we sit right now. But like I said, every once in a while we get customers that call up and say, look, I really need this. I spend five, I spend 10,000. I spend $1,000, whatever. I really need help. We can introduce them to one of our clients, and our clients will basically give them access to our technology, handhold them, get them set up, and get them growing. And once they get to a certain point, if it makes sense, they can move over to us.
Okay. You mentioned you also developed this own software like yourself. So is that like coding? Like how did you learn how to code and just build this out efficiently and correctly? Where did those skills come?
Uh, I've been a developer since I wrote my first game when I was 9 years old,
Really? Okay.
published in a Compute Gazette when I was 12 years old. I've been a developer my whole life. I just found coding really easy. So when I had the idea of what I wanted to do, I just sat down and banged it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
What a
just
skill set. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Um, so you're working with the mid-sized companies. You guys have always been growing a lot since 2017. Um, Talk to me like how your technology actually works. I mean, is this something that if a company brings you guys on, do you guys install some kind of software within all their like software that their own laptops that'll just protect, look over all the emails that come in and make sure nothing is fishy or spammy, or how does that process work?
Well, our technology is protecting the visitor, right? Or protecting them from visitors.
Okay.
So if you had a site, for example, and you had an e-commerce site, there's scanning bots that will come along, scan your entire inventory and pricing catalog, give it to your competitor, and the competitor can beat you based on price because they know what your pricing is, right? Um, You ever hear of bots clicking on your digital marketing ads, right?
Uh,
You haven't. Okay. So look at Google, look at ChatGPT, and ask about bots, and it'll give you a whole slew of what's been going on. And to give you an example, how big of a problem this is, last year, like we said, it was a little over $700 billion was spent on digital marketing. By conservative guesstimates, we're estimating that 140 billion was stolen by fraud.
wow.
So if you're losing 140 billion dollars to fraud, I mean that's something that we can help identify.
Yeah, that's a huge market right there. That's crazy. How do you see AI kind of affecting your guys' industry and what do you think the impacts of AI are going to be for the next couple of years going forward in this game?
It's going to help and hurt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's going to help us in the fact that the average person is not going to be able to spend the time to figure out what's going on with fraud. And because some companies they want to do it in-house, and they're like, "Look, we got a smart team. We can do this stuff," but they forget they're only looking at their data. They're not looking globally. They're not looking at all the data. We have access to hundreds of clients' data that we bring in and aggregate and look for trends and stuff that an analysis that's going on before it becomes a big problem. AI is going to make it exponentially harder for companies to do it themselves. They're going to need a solution like us. And it makes it harder, which hurts because it makes our job harder because we rolled out an update the other week. We roll out updates probably twice a week. We had an update go out, like I said, last week, and they beat it within 5 hours because they were using an AI model learning against our system. Luckily, we were able to shut it down very quickly. Took us a couple hours to shut it down and prevent them from coming back. But this is the kind of stuff I expect that to get worse over time, where whatever's going on. I mean, we're all familiar with ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows ChatGPT. Well, not everybody's familiar with, but there's a thing called FraudGPT. This is a product this is an AI that will actually write bots for you. You basically say, I want a bot that does this, that, and the other thing. Hit go, it actually writes the bot for you. And then you can say, okay, how do I install this and run this? And if you have a little technical knowledge, but you're not a programmer, it'll walk you step by step through how to deploy it. So because of that tool and AI is always getting smarter, that's going to make it more and more difficult for companies like myself to find the levels of fraud and identify it and eliminate it. While it's going to also make it it's just going to help us because more and more people are going to be affected by fraud and they're going to need a solution like us.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing until you just said that, but that's so scary, like you said.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Are you guys leveraging AI with your software and your guys' future development? I mean, is that part of the plans?
We we use AI to different areas of our business. We don't let it run our stuff. 'Cause It's the best way I can describe AI. It's kind of like a kid that learns, right? You teach it to do something, but then it goes off and does its own thing, right? We don't like that. We like to have total control because my team have been working on this problem for 15, 20 years outside of myself. So my chief product officer has been with me 15 years. My CTO has been with me 10 years. One of my chief developers, 18 years. I mean, we have longevity of time of people who just know what to look for and how to do this. So AI is definitely one of the tools that we use to look at loopholes and find new things to help because it's fast, right? It's fast, it's intelligent. You don't have to, but it's used, we use it for a certain purpose, but we do a lot of stuff internally also.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I mean, yeah. I think at some point AI is going to be part of every single business model going forward. Just a matter of how big or how small that part is really going to be at the end of the day. So, gotta stay ahead of that curve. But before we run out of time, I just got a couple more questions to ask you. One, looking back on your journey as an entrepreneur, obviously today we just talked a lot about the ups that you've had, but I'm sure there's been a lot of downs as well because it's entrepreneurship. It's like a roller coaster. But going back, I mean, if you could go back to when you were younger, would you make the same career decisions, same path, or would you change anything?
Well, I've never been asked this question, so that's a good question to ask. There's probably a lot of things like hindsight's 2020,
Yeah,
but I'll give you an example. In 2000, I had built a company called Pay for Surf, and it was basically paying people to surf the web. Basically, we give you an application that runs on your desktop. It would flip through ad units, banners, and we would split the revenue with you. So you'd make some money. And then basically it was a multi-level marketing style design so that you can refer some friends, they can refer some friends, and you made money off all of them too. So we had people making a couple $1,000s a month. I mean, it was a really kind of a cool concept and what was going on. We built this company and 3 months later we had a $60 million deal on the table to acquire the company. There was three of us in the company. We were trying to bring on a fourth partner during this process at the same time. And it was just, we had some really cool designs of where we're headed with this thing. It was awesome. And by time we were able to get everybody together to close the deal, it was it was scheduled for April 28th of 2000. And if we look at our history books, we'll find out that the dot-com bubble burst at April 14th, 2 weeks prior to the closing. So if I could change anything, I would have moved that meeting up 2 weeks and
Oh,
got it closed before. I would have been that 28-year-old with a, $60 million company sold. That would have been kind of cool.
yeah, that would have been crazy. That would have been crazy. But
That's
yeah,
one of them.
guess everything happens for a reason, you know? So all part of the journey, all part of the
Yes.
journey. Um, so I guess my next question is if people want to reach out to you or your company, what's the best way for them to go about and find you?
So the best way to find the company is Anura, Anura.io or .com. We own both. The main address is .io. Find me, easiest place to get me is LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn probably first year, second year LinkedIn was up. And it's just Rich Kahn. I'm easy to find. Um, or just reach me by email, rich@anura.io.
Awesome. All right. Well, guys, go reach out to him and go check out his company, doing a lot of great things. And with that being said, Rich Kahn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure.